Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer, here with Mike Gallagher to walk you through tonight's 6-game slate in the association. After a 10-game slate last night, 6 games feels like a breeze. Mike and I have already recorded one podcast. We have on the docket today podcast, Injury Report show, Establish the Show. I then have Established the Million, then Playback. Tonight we'll be hanging out, sweating games at 9 o'clock Eastern. Playback, playback.tv/ETR. Make sure you create an account, link your TV provider. If you have League Pass, you'll be able to flip around with us. If you do not, and you just have a TV provider that has TNT, when we're on those games, you'll be able to see with us and sweat with us. And we'll talk through, answer questions, talk through if there's live betting opportunities, so on and so forth. Mike, how are you on this fine Thursday?
Doing good, yeah. Lots of content. I also have my little Thursday radio spot I do with Nick Kostas and Will Brinson, who you guys know he's filling in for Ken Barkley. So pumped for that. Looking at some bets, but yeah, decent amount of Q tags today. Also excited we got a big win yesterday on the prop streets, and yeah, shout out to the playback. You were on the Denver Live that we barely got, so that was a fun sweat. I'm sure we'll have. There's a few late games that will be popping on when they're going to close, so maybe we can get some halftime opportunities to bet. There's a lot of injuries. There's some really good injury leans that we're going to talk through today. I think there's some pretty good edge we can attack today.
All right, well, let's get to it. Let's start with the questionable tags. Charlotte, LaMelo Ball is still questionable, as is Gordon Hayward and Terry Rozier tonight. So a lot of questionable tags in a game against Chicago. What are your leans, and how do you think the rotation will shake out if they're without any of these players tonight?
So Terry Rozier, I'm going to start with him. He got downgraded to probable now. Most times. Yeah. Downloaded to probable, and most of the time, most people would just shrug this off, unless it's the Bucks, who, by the way, listed Marshawn Beauchamp probably yesterday, missed. And then going back to November 28th, the Hornets downgraded Terry Rozier to probable about the same time of day for an illness. He did not play, so do not treat this probable tag. Treat it like a Bucks probable tag. LaMelo, very fake questionable vibes. He did a little warm up in Phoenix prior to their last game. Wasn't moving around very well. Was shaking his wrist, so he's dealing with 2 injuries. I mentioned he needed help off the court when he got hurt in Houston. This is the 3rd time he's rolled that ankle. Very suspect. Questionable tag there. I think he's missing. Gordon Hayward also listed as questionable. This is kind of fake Q tag vibes. Came off the last game, did miss it. Clifford sounded like he's going to probably be back, so I think it was just a maintenance back-to-back thing. So I would expect Hayward back probably close to 30 minutes. We'll see, but they could be without their guards. I mean, we're expecting Rozier to play, to be clear, but like I said, don't treat that probable tag like a Blazers probable tag or a Minnesota questionable tag. I would consider him questionable.
If they were to be without Terry Rozier and without LaMelo Ball, we saw Bryce McGowan slide in the starting lineup, but Dennis Smith Jr. still pick up the bulk of the minutes. Are those the two you would expect to start in that scenario, or do you think Gordon Hayward is basically treated as a guard and they keep Jalen McDaniels in the starting lineup? How do you think they would adjust things if they were without their 2 guards, LaMelo Ball and Terry Rozier tonight?
I think they'd have to start Smith. Taking Rozier out is a really big responsibility. You need to dump it on somebody. You're not going to dump it on really anybody else. So if it's both, I would expect DSJ to start. If it's just one, I'm expecting Hayward back. So it will be Terry Rozier, Hayward basically as a 2, McDaniels as a 3, PJ Washington, and then the final boss, Mason Plumlee, against a bad matchup today. The Bulls are pretty good against big, so maybe we can actually win an under on them.
Probably not. Let's move to Brooklyn, where Seth Curry is questionable. Royce O'Neal probable. Second end of a back-to-back here for Brooklyn, so always worried about more injury tags popping up, but they have filed. What are your leans on Brooklyn tonight?
Yeah, definitely a suspect Q tag for Seth Curry. Played big minutes. Really outstanding game from him with 32 points. Could certainly miss this one against Detroit. Should be all right without him. We'll talk about their injuries in a second, but yeah, Royce should be okay. Probably just a workload kind of thing for playing 35 minutes in a high possession game. So, but if Seth missed, could be Cam Thomas's music. I think that they don't necessarily have to load him up there, but we could see more minutes out of TJ Warren, who didn't play a lot again on the front end of a back-to-back. We saw this last time they had a front end of a back-to-back. But yeah, generally everything else is mostly the same. But I think Cam Thomas could sneak in. It wouldn't be too fantasy relevant, but just something to watch if you can't go.
Have you had any indication on the TJ Warren stuff? Because it's not, I mean, yes, he played minutes that were lower on the front end of the back-to-back, but the last 4 games have been 7 front end of back-to-back, 18, 11, and 9. And he's been showing up on the injury report with like probable tags every once in a while. Do you have any indications like this, that combination of things is very concerning for me in terms of TJ Warren?
Yeah. Especially this is the time you need him with Kevin Durant out. So yeah, very puzzling. No one's really asking much about Jacques Vaughn, and he did get asked a couple times back when this first happened. So yeah, I don't have much, but yeah, it's very odd to see his minutes come down when they're missing their main scorer.
Let's move to the Detroit side of this. Isaiah Livers and Isaiah Stewart, a couple of Isaiahs on the injury report for Detroit tonight, both listed questionable. Otherwise, no Corey Joseph, no Cade Cunningham, no Marvin Bagley, all those things. What are your thoughts on Livers and Stewart availability tonight? We saw Jalen Duren slide back in the starting lineup and have a huge game against Milwaukee last time out in the absence of Stewart.
Yeah, Isaiah Stewart dealing with a shoulder injury that's been nagging him for probably about a month now. And when he played, he had a huge heat pack treatment. Trainer was wrapping him up. So it's more of a maintenance thing. It sounded like Casey is expecting him to miss. Just with the way he described the defense and how they may not get guys back. Obviously, Stewart is not really a key defender, but fills minutes and changes the way they play defense. And Stewart also, Isaiah Livers, is a guy that is important for their defense. They don't, they're missing kind of on-ball defenders. So, yeah, I think he's got a decent chance to miss. Rolled his ankle, doesn't sound serious. So, don't have a great lean on those guys.
A questionable tag that I was shocked to see today when I logged in and was working on projections was Donovan Mitchell, who's listed questionable for Cleveland tonight. That injury, to me, I thought it was going to be weeks. What are your thoughts on Donovan Mitchell tonight? Front end of a back-to-back for Cleveland, so very skeptical of this questionable tag. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, front end against Houston. Should add, and I mentioned this on the podcast we just did, it looked bad, man. Last shot of the game, he crumpled to the floor. He was cursing. Trainer was looking at his knee, looking at his groin, and he was cursing on his way off the court. Didn't get helped off. Is a left groin strain. This is the same left groin strain that kept him out for games. So aggravation, soft tissue injury, back-to-back. I mean, add it up. This is a guy that's going to miss. So I feel pretty confident that he's not going to play, which is pretty easy to answer here. Karis LeVert. I did not go on starter's jersey run, which I'll do at the next pause. But definitely expecting Karis LeVert to start. And we'll see if we can get more Rubio minutes. His minutes have not been elevated, really. They brought him on really, really slowly.
Yeah. Luke Kennard.
How do you feel about it? So I
don't think there's that. I would be shocked if Donovan Mitchell played. Obviously, if he's out, we've seen Karis LeVert just slide in that starting lineup and be great. I think Rob asked, do we think Mitchell sits tomorrow too? I think there's a chance. I'm just really surprised that he was listed as questionable right away. That certainly is an indication that there's a better chance that he could be available tomorrow. And even tonight, obviously, if they're listing him as questionable, but it's like they don't have a reason to push this, in my opinion. So they have depth. The matchup tonight, especially against Houston, isn't particularly concerning. So I would think that it would just be a spot where you just slide Karis LeVert in and go from there. And then tomorrow the matchup at Oklahoma City, obviously a little bit more challenging, but still it's not an Eastern Conference opponent. It's not a direct playoff contender opponent. Their next set against a Eastern Conference opponent would be Tuesday, January 31st against Miami. We'll see how serious this injury is, but I would be surprised if it's not a few games just based on the way it looked at the time. But I'm not privy to any specific information other than what I saw on the broadcast.
Yeah. I'll add no starter jerseys. They're on the road, so their beats aren't giving us any tips. So hate to see it, but and also should add Chris Feeder, who's one of their most plugged-in reporters. He had kind of he could miss multiple games. Underdog ran with that, and just the tone of the article made it seem like he's going to miss. And again, he just pulled his groin this month. Why would you put him out there again? Like, look what happens to Bradley Beal and all these. And Paul George had this issue. Like, don't push it if you aggravate a soft tissue.
Yeah. Let's go to the Clippers. Luke Kennard and Marcus Morris both questionable. Still no injury report for Paul George. Kawhi Leonard, things are still chugging along well there. What are your expectations on Kennard or Marcus Morris and their availability tonight?
Yeah, general buzz from the beats that Luke Kennard's going to come back for this one. So I think that kind of makes sense timeline-wise. We saw him this time last week, start to get some shots up. It's generally a good timeline for a guy to return, which raises a couple questions. I'll get to Morris in a second. But the last time he was out there, he started. And I think that they kind of like that fit. There were some comments from Ty Lue talking about breaking up Reggie Jackson, Lou, and Luke Kennard. This was obviously before the John Wall injury. So there's a couple of factors at play here. But I wouldn't be totally shocked to see Kennard start over Man. We've seen Man, be the point guard for defense. But there's a little push and pull on the Marcus Morris stuff. But just keep an eye on Kennard. He'll have a calf strain, aggravation on a calf strain. So he'll have a pretty long ramp up. So I don't think he's going to start today, but just something I'm keeping an eye on. That quote kind of just came back to me as I was researching here. Marcus Morris hitting the rib, didn't return. Shouldn't be too serious. Generally, guys return from those kinds of injuries. So we'll see. But I would lean in on him.
If Morris is out and Kennard was in, you would think for sure Kennard is starting in that scenario? Or do you think it's not?
No, I think I don't think he's going to be ready there just because they want to ramp him up pretty slow. That's not usually their cup of tea to run him out there for a role player like that. Run him out. Okay. I just think they would bring him off the bench here, but just something that kind of came to my mind.
Just because I'm thinking
Batum. Yeah, good.
I'm thinking like they're so big they can easily just in Marcus Morris, the role that he fills offensively for them is just spot up shooting, which is exactly what Luke Kennard does best. And of the available options that they have on the bench to fill that role specifically, he's the best of the bunch. But you think Batum would get the nod if Marcus Morris were out? Okay.
Yeah, we saw him get on there against the Spurs, and I forgot to put Romeo on the rundown, so we can get to that.
Yeah, we can talk about Romeo Langford. He is questionable, right? Or have they not filed? They have not.
Yeah,
filed.
They probably didn't file. Yeah.
Yeah, they haven't filed. But our expectation, he missed last night. Our expectation is that he's not going to be available tonight. We saw Keita Bates-Diop slide in that starting lineup in his absence. Who knows what else we'll get from San Antonio on the spot. But if you want to add more context to Langford, now's a great time.
Yeah. So great time. So Greg Popovich called it a painful injury and he's expecting to miss time. So expecting Romeo out. Keita Bates-Diop picked up the LeBron assignment. Very similar spot. You're going to see a lot of size on the other end with Kawhi. So he would probably start, get the Kawhi matchup, probably get pretty good minutes there. Matchup not as great for scoring, but I'm definitely expecting a decent bit of KBD. But could be more. Definitely could be more. We've seen Keldon Johnson pop up on the injury report in back-to-backs. Has missed. I don't have the research here, but I could look it up in a second. But he's missed back-to-back sets for this hamstring thing. So certainly a spot to sit him there. Enjoy the LA nightlife. McDermott could get a tag. We could even see Jakob Poeltl get a tag. We could see kind of a lot of tags. It's a late start here at 10:30 Eastern, so maybe we can have some stuff to bet into if we get Q tags or anything like that. But yeah, if you are into betting closing line value, and I'm not anymore. I'm not caping for this anymore. But yeah, be ready. We're probably not going to get it in 15 minutes, but after that, we might get it. But the Spurs are early sometimes, so we could get a lot on this injury report coming up.
Players expected back tonight. DeAndre Ayton is expected back. I was just listening to a clip of him talking about the illness that he was dealing with, which was impacting him with migraines and also with breath, with catching his breath. And they were trying to ramp him up and it just didn't work. His body kind of reacted negatively to it. He is expected back tonight. How does that impact Phoenix? We've seen like the bigs rotation is getting very condensed with guys available that they could play. Josh Okogie's played really well. They're ramping up Cam Johnson, Torrey Craig. His minutes have been volatile as a result. Dario Saric, his minutes have been super volatile. When he starts, he plays like 8. When he's off the bench, he's DNP or he plays 20. We saw Bismack Biyombo play really, really well against Charlotte in a revenge spot. Jock Landale did his work in limited minutes as well. Ayton back obviously limits Bismack Biyombo and Landale in terms of their impact. But how does this shake out into Dario Saric and Torrey Craig and Cam Johnson and all those guys as well?
Yeah, a lot of moving parts. Just with Aiton, did go on a treadmill a couple days ago, and I kind of mentioned that there's a teensy chance he could have gotten upgraded. Obviously, he didn't. Got ruled out early. But yeah, as you mentioned, really bothered by this illness, so probably has a cap on him. And then after that, a whole lot going on here. Let's do Cam Johnson next. So we saw his minutes, hang around. It was awesome. He didn't have to really up his minutes. And Monty Williams said after the game, they're kind of shooting for like upper 20s minutes now. I'm kind of paraphrasing. I generally felt that was like a 2, 3, 4, 5 more game of getting upper 20s minutes, and then they want to get him to low 30s. So you're probably talking like close to deadline / All-Star break time for that. So expect Cam to be a little bit limited. That could give Torrey Craig a decent amount of minutes, but not a lot. And then you got the backcourt depth. So Kevin Young is one of their assistant coaches. He kind of leads the bigs and gives Monty input on how to use them. And Kevin Young has been clamoring to Monty Williams to play Dario as a 5-man. Now, roster-wise, they've already got 3 now, and should also add Kevin Young, the same guy, had mentioned that he likes Dario's fit, and Monty does too, next to Jock Landale. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Bismack Biyombo go from starter to out of the rotation to play those guys together. And it's a spot where you may want to lean into charge as a 5, right? You're playing against a team you want to have a switch heavier scheme, give some spacing on the offensive side. So I wouldn't be totally surprised if Dario's minutes climb a little bit. He's been playing pretty well lately. Monty seems to have confidence. But yeah, whole lot going on here with ramp ups, pairings, and it's a rotation nuts kind of dream to figure this thing out.
Yeah. I wanted to note, Gallagher, the people in chat love you. But they also clearly are not aware of all of the content that you're doing because you are all over the place. You are all over the place in terms of content, matchups, podcasts, guest appearances on radios, this show every day, establish the show twice a week. So yeah, Josh, Gallagher is out and about in the streets doing the content.
Yeah. If you want content from me, it's out there, man. There's no doubt about it.
Let's move to the Celtics side of thing. They get Jaylen Brown back. They get Malcolm Brogdon back. They get Al Horford back. Still no Marcus Smart. That's going to be a little bit longer. What are your expectations on how things look for the Celtics? Peyton Pritchard's minutes, so on and so forth.
Yeah. He's late, so maybe he's talking about you. Maybe you were on top because I'm definitely you're way better at this than me. Yeah. So pretty straightforward here. We should see the starting lineup go somewhat back to normal. Pritchard was pretty good off the bench, and man, played 42 minutes. Didn't even hit his points over. For people who hit that, I was kind of a rogue on my part, but the PRA was good. I think it's kind of straightforward. Should note Robert Williams' minutes are elevated now. That's something that I think that could change the dynamic of this defense and even offense with a little bit more rim running component and just shot profile style, because we've seen their shot 3-point shooting volume be really high. It was number 1. It's ticking down a little bit. I think it's 3rd right now. So just something to add there. But expecting Boston, I think, to put it on this Knicks team. I like how they're playing right now. I think getting these guys rested. Jaylen Brown was pure rest. Minutes were elevated really high in his return. So expecting pretty good role. Should mention Jason Tatum dinged up his knee. So I'm going to be watching to see if he had any sort of tape up. Also, his wrist is bothering him. Same wrist that he hurt in the playoffs last year that he played through. And he's getting more and more treatment. He just had the early wrist wrap, and now he has like the wrap along his thumb. So it's getting a little worse. Something just to keep an eye on with him. But should see pretty straightforward rotation with the guys back. Still no Marcus Smart.
Yeah. Doubtful and outs. Evan Fournier away from the team for the birth of his baby boy with the Knicks. Any notes you want to drop there on the Knicks rotation as they still continue to work without Mitch Robinson?
No, I think kind of straightforward. I do want to add, though, that there was some comments from Tom Thibodeau, and I feel pretty good about my Tom Thibodeau decoder ring status. And he talked a lot about Julius Randle's rebounding. I think that's really important to note because I've mentioned this a lot, that whenever Tibbs is really worried about rebounding, he will lean into straight center lineups. He doesn't want to go to Obi Toppin and Randle or multiple guards and Randle at the 5. Now you're playing Boston. You're playing against a lot of wings. You're playing against a team that has a lot of ball handling, a team that you want to lean into a smaller, switchier kind of defense. So I think that I wouldn't be surprised to see more Randle minutes in this spot. It seems very, very, and you're going to want to have offense and combat their 3-point shooting that way. So I feel like we could see more Randle center minutes, and should add also RJ Barrett lost like a half rotation because the bench was really good to get the win over the Cavs. That's probably coming back elevated. We know RJ Barrett could play 40, 45 minutes even sometimes. So just something to note there, because we've seen a lot of Sims and Hartenstein big block late too. So something definitely to watch. I think there's some edge on that.
I was hoping for some positive commentaries on my guy Hartenstein. He played really well that game, plus 11 in his 23 minutes, has the game-winning block. I thought that might get him in the good graces and earn some playing time over noted passing wizard Jericho Sims, but apparently not. I'm still holding out hope. Okay, Goran Dragic out for the Bulls. He's missed the last few games we've seen. Depending on the matchup, they'll elevate the minutes for Alex Caruso if they need more defense on the wings. Sometimes they'll elevate the minutes for Kobe White if they're playing from behind or they need to chase offense. It still hasn't resulted in Andre Drummond getting into the rotation more severely, despite matchups against opposing bigs. So it seems like that's just the way it's going to be now that Derrick Jones Jr. is the backup center for the most part. Any other notes on Goran Dragic being out and how that impacts things for the Bulls?
No, pretty straightforward. We'll see if this is an opportunity to cut minutes down for guys against Charlotte, especially if Rozier is going to be out. But I think it's worth noting too, if LaMelo and Rozier are out, you don't really need the on-ball defense nearly as bad. So I'm curious to see how that would affect the Kobe White, Caruso, Ayo Dosunmu kind of dynamic for how the rotations go, just from a need standpoint in the certain matchup.
Yeah, that's a good note. And then Houston, we'll leave with them. They are on the second night of a back-to-back, have not filed yet. We know Eric Gordon has been vulnerable to sitting on second nights of back-to-back, but they've been without Kevin Porter Jr. for a while now. We know Jabari Smith has been dinged up and unable to go in a game here or there, and then was able to go last night. So what are your thoughts on what we'll see from the Rockets? I would guess this one will be coming in 8 minutes.
Yes. So I'm going to start with Jabari Smith. He returned and he had his quote minutes monitored, got pretty close to full, shot the ball like crap. Silas said after the game that he looked rusty out of the gate, which was abrasive commentary. But he said his defense was pretty good. So curious to see if he is managed or out even with an ankle sprain. Ankle sprains on young players generally isn't something, but and it should add to he was pissed, man. Like usually these coaches on bad teams, Dwayne Casey, Popovich, Silas, they kind of have a glass half full mentality. He was like, oh, unacceptable play. We shouldn't have lost this game, et cetera, et cetera. They got torched in the fourth.
They've been getting hammered by. I mean, there's been a lot of negative press around the team and the atmosphere and the culture of late, and I think I think Silas is starting to feel some of that criticism in a way that's changing his tune.
Yep. So something to keep an eye on there. Definitely think Eric Gordon's is definitely at risk to miss this one. Certainly not going to expect Kevin Porter Jr. back. Shout out to me for Şengün, cover boy, 20-point triple-double, really big game from him. And also commentary from Silas about trying to keep two of the following guys on the court at the same time. Jalen Green, Şengün, Eric Gordon, and Jae'Sean Tate, who has been taking on a pretty big ball handling role. We've seen this before where he was kind of a point center when they were really shorthanded in his rookie season. So Tate looks to be over his injury. They've been ramping him up pretty slowly. So he's kind of eating into Eason's rates a little bit. He's not really popping off quite the same, but we'll see. But be ready for news on the Rockets.
All right, that will do it for this edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. As always, please support the people who are supporting us. The show is brought to you by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. They have daily NBA snake drafts for money, running in addition to many formats of NFL playoff contests, still running for huge prizes. If you're playing NBA Pick'em, in-season subscribers at ETR can use our tools to compare ETR projections to their fantasy Pick'em games. If you haven't signed up for Underdog yet, use promo code ETR for a matching deposit bonus up to $100. It's promo code ETR at underdogfantasy.com. All right, if you want more content from Mike Gallagher and from myself, get behind the paywall. 5 o'clock Eastern time tonight. We'll be breaking down the DFS ramifications on tonight's show, breaking down the 6-game slate. We will also, in front of the paywall for free, playback.tv/ETR. Create an account there. 9 o'clock. You can sweat the games with us, ask questions, have Q&A. It'll be myself, Mike Gallagher, Mark Dankenbring, perhaps other members of the ETR team will pop in depending on availability. But watch the games with us, sweat the games with us. We'll sweat bets, maybe make some live bets, so on and so forth. Playback.tv/ETR, 9 o'clock Eastern time tonight. We will be going live.
And if you're listening, you're going to join right up here in the top right. You see my mouse moving up there? That's how you sync up your TV provider. So do that, and now you can watch with us.
Make sure to sync up your TV provider, and you can follow along. As long as your TV provider gets the games we are flipping to, you will be able to see them with us and sweat them with us and hang out with us. All right. If you are uninterested in giving us your hard-earned dollars and joining us behind the paywall, we do ask for your hard-earned clicks. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel, get notifications whenever we go live. Also, consider smashing that like button and helping feed the algorithm, circulating our content to more eyeballs so they can find more of us in our content on the interwebs. As we always say, help feed the algorithm, help us feed our families, and we'll help feed you the DFS and injury report analysis that you need each and every night to make your prop bets, make your DFS lineups, and get you ready for the NBA slate ahead. Nom, 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 nom. See you tomorrow.